I was still adjusting the navy dress I had bought for Dean's wedding when the laughter cracked open the air. Fallon lifted her champagne glass, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. "Who wants to take home a sick mother-in-law?" The guests chuckled, uneasy but willing. My face burned. I gripped the napkin in my lap until my knuckles went white. "Come on, Dean," she teased. "What would you bid for your dear mother?" My son, my only child, stood tall in his black tuxedo. He raised his glass, grinning. $8? The sound that followed wasn't laughter. It was something crueler, a roar at my expense. The woman who had sold her wedding ring to buy his first car, who had worked 2 jobs after Harold died just to keep him afloat, reduced to $8. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was sit at table 12, far from the family table, invisible in a room full of roses and candlelight. That's when the man beside me rose. He had been quiet all evening, a stranger with kind eyes who had introduced himself as Kareem. Now his voice carried like thunder. 3 million. The entire ballroom froze. Fallon's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble. Dean's mouth fell open. 300 guests held their breath. 3 million, Kareem repeated, calm and steady. For the privilege of caring for this remarkable woman. Remarkable. The word pierced deeper than the insult ever had. For a moment, I forgot the humiliation, the laughter, the sting of my son's betrayal. I looked up at him, at the light catching silver in his hair, and something stirred. A memory from another life, a hospital corridor. A young man with dark eyes who once told me I could do anything. "Kareem," I whispered. He turned, and the years fell away. "Hello, Mabel," he said softly. The room was silent, suspended, every gaze swinging between us. My son's voice cracked, thin and desperate. "Mom, who is this man?" I opened my mouth, but the answer caught in my throat. 40 years of silence pressed against my chest. All around me the wedding waited. My son's guests, my daughter-in-law's smirk, the broken glass glittering on the floor. And at the center stood the man who had just placed the value of my life higher than anyone else ever had. The silence after his words pressed down like a weight. 300 guests sat frozen, their champagne glasses suspended mid-air, their laughter caught in their throats. Fallon's smirk had vanished, replaced by a face drained of color. Dean stared at the man beside me like he was an apparition. 3 million, Kareem said again, his voice calm, even, and absolute. Cash, for the honor of caring for this remarkable woman. For a heartbeat, the ballroom held its breath. Then the whispers began, rippling through the room like wind through dry leaves. Heads turned, phones appeared, faces shifted from amusement to disbelief. Fallon's glass lay shattered at her feet, champagne bleeding across the marble. She clutched the table's edge, her knuckles white. Dean looked like a boy again, caught misbehaving, his grin gone. And me? I sat rigid, heat burning in my cheeks, my napkin shredded between my fingers. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to scream. All I could do was sit there, surrounded by people who had laughed at my worth, who had watched my son put a price tag on my life. "Who are you?" Dean finally asked, his voice strained, almost cracking. Kareem didn't look at him. His eyes stayed on me, steady, dark, familiar. "I'm someone who knows value when I see it." That was when Fallon spoke again, her voice sharp with disbelief. 3 million? You can't be serious. "I'm completely serious," he replied, his accent turning the words into something heavier than money. "Though I suspect Mrs. Thornton is worth far more." The room erupted in low gasps. Fallon's mouth worked soundlessly, her face flickering between greed and rage. My son was pale, sweat beginning to bead at his temple. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, all I felt was hollow. The humiliation was still there, seared into my chest. The laughter still echoed in my ears. And worst of all was the memory of Dean's voice, the ease with which he had put me on the auction block. $8. I had raised him alone after Harold died, sold jewelry, skipped meals, worked double shifts. I had sacrificed every dream I once had so he could have his. And with one careless grin, he told the world I was worth less than a dinner check. As the whispers grew, Kareem straightened. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "What you just witnessed was not entertainment. It was cruelty. A son degrading his mother. A bride encouraging abuse for the sake of a laugh. I want you all to remember this moment." The words landed like stones. People shifted in their chairs, shame crawling across their faces. Some lowered their eyes. Others stared openly, uncomfortable. I saw Fallon's parents flush red, their hands tightening around their glasses. Even they couldn't deny what had just happened. Dean tried to recover. "Mr. Al-Rashid, this is a family matter." "Family?" Kareem laughed, but it was sharp, humorless. "A family protects. A family does not auction its own. What I saw tonight was not family. It was abuse." The word cut through the air. Abuse. Guests gasped, murmurs spreading. Dean flinched, his jaw tightening. Fallon's lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes darting from Kareem's suit to his watch, already calculating. I sat in the center of it, my heart pounding, the walls of the life I had built cracking open in front of strangers. Every glance in my direction carried pity, judgment, curiosity. I hated it. I hated that my pain was now their spectacle. Dean stepped forward, desperation edging his tone. "Please, let's take this somewhere private." "No," Kareem said firmly. "You humiliated her publicly. My response will be public." That was when the shame turned inward, pressing heavy on my chest. I couldn't hide anymore. The truth of what my son had become, what I had allowed, was on display for everyone. The sacrifices I made, the years I had swallowed my hurt, the times I told myself he was just busy, just distracted, just stressed. All of it had led here, to my only child laughing at me. Fallon tried to smooth it over, her smile brittle. "It was just a harmless joke, that's all." "Harmless?" I heard my own voice break free, sharper than I intended. I stood slowly, my knees trembling. "You called me sick. You turned me into a punchline, and my son bid $8. Tell me, Fallon, tell me, Dean, what exactly was harmless about that?" The ballroom went still again. I could feel every eye on me. The silence was suffocating, but this time, I welcomed it. Let them hear. Let them see. "I worked 2 jobs after your father died," I said, my voice rising with each word. "I sold my wedding ring to buy you that car, Dean. I took out a second mortgage so you could go to college. And tonight, in front of all these people, you said I was worth $8. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. $8. That's what a mother's love is worth to you? Dean's face flushed crimson, sweat sliding down his temple. "Mom, it was a joke." "No, a joke makes people laugh together. What you did was cruelty." The whispers had turned into something else now, a low buzz of shock, sympathy, judgment. Some guests nodded faintly. Others shook their heads. Fallon's mask of charm had slipped, her eyes narrowed and calculating. I could feel my chest heaving, my hands shaking, the years of silence breaking open. For the first time, I wasn't swallowing it down. For the first time, I was saying it out loud. And Kareem moved closer, his hand brushing my shoulder, steady, grounding. His voice was low, meant only for me. "Mabel, you don't need to explain yourself to those who don't value you." That tenderness cracked me wide open. Tears came then, hot and sudden, not of humiliation, but of release. I had held them back for so long, and now they spilled freely, staining the napkin I still clutched. Dean stared, his voice desperate. "Who is this man? Why is he defending you like this? What's going on?" Kareem turned slightly, his expression unreadable. "Because she deserves to be defended. She deserves respect." Dean's confusion deepened. "Mom, tell me the truth. Who is he?" I looked at Kareem, at the man who had once asked me to leave everything behind, the man I had loved in secret 4 decades ago. His silver hair, his steady eyes, the way he stood unflinching beside me. My heart pounded with a truth I had buried for half a lifetime. I opened my mouth to speak, my lips parted, but the words tangled in my throat. 40 years of silence sat heavy on my chest. The ballroom waited, 300 strangers staring, my son demanding, my daughter-in-law calculating, and beside me, the man I had once almost chosen. "This is Kareem al-Rashid," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "An old friend." Dean blinked, confused, almost panicked. "An old friend who offers $3 million? Mom, what the hell is going on?" Kareem's hand brushed my shoulder again, steady, as if to remind me I wasn't alone. "I'm someone who has watched this woman be treated as less than she deserves," he said evenly, "and I won't stand by any longer." Fallon leaned forward, her tone turning syrupy. "Mr. al-Rashid, perhaps we should discuss this privately. You seem very successful. Maybe there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Kareem said, his voice cutting through the room. "I know exactly what I saw." The air thickened. Guests shifted in their seats, torn between curiosity and discomfort. I could feel their stares, hear the tiny clicks of phones recording, sense the judgment curling around me. My humiliation wasn't private anymore. It was everywhere, in their whispers, their gasps, their averted eyes. Dean tried again, his voice cracking. "Look, Mr. al-Rashid, I appreciate your concern, but this is my family. We'll handle it." Kareem's laugh was low and cold. "Family protects each other. What I saw here tonight was not protection. It was exploitation." The word hung in the air. Exploitation. I wanted to sink into the floor, but at the same time, I felt something stir. A crack of light through the shame. For years, I had accepted the small slights, the forgotten calls, the careless dismissals. Tonight, under the chandeliers and roses, there was no hiding. My son's indifference was laid bare. Fallon's father stood abruptly, his face red. "We didn't know she was going to do that. Fallon, what were you thinking?" But Fallon wasn't listening. Her gaze was locked on Kareem, hunger in her eyes. She saw the wealth in his bearing, the authority in his tone, and already she was scheming. I could almost hear the gears turning. I steadied myself, finally finding my own voice. "No, Dean. You don't get to brush this aside. You bid $8 for your own mother. 8. My words rang louder than I intended, fueled by the years I had swallowed hurt. Do you know what that said to me? To everyone? Dean's face was blotched red, his tuxedo collar damp with sweat. "Mom, it was just a joke!" "No, jokes bring people together. What you did was cruelty." For the first time, I saw hesitation in his eyes. Maybe even shame. But it was fleeting, smothered quickly by Fallon's sharp grip on his arm. She whispered something into his ear, and I watched him swallow whatever apology might have formed. Kareem stepped closer, his presence anchoring me. "Mabel," he said softly, just for me. "You don't have to justify yourself anymore." The tenderness in his voice cracked something open. My eyes filled, tears spilling over, tears I hadn't allowed myself in years. Not since Harold died, not since Dean began drifting away. not since I learned to carry the weight quietly, alone. Through blurred vision, I saw Fallon stand straighter, her smile tightening. "Mr. Al-Rashid," she said sweetly, "surely you don't mean to make a scene. We could resolve this with a civilized conversation." Kareem's eyes hardened. "The cruelty was public. The response will be public." A collective shiver ran through the room. Guests leaned in, phones held higher. Fallon faltered, then quickly masked it with a laugh. "Honestly, everyone, it was just harmless fun. Right, Dean?" Dean nodded weakly, but the damage was done. I saw it in the faces around us. The way friends of Harold's shifted uncomfortably, the way old neighbors frowned, the way even Fallon's own siblings avoided her eyes. The illusion of a perfect wedding was gone, shattered with that glass at Fallon's feet. Kareem looked around the room, his voice ringing out. "Remember what you saw tonight. A son auctioning his mother. A bride mocking her elder. Ask yourselves if that is family. Ask yourselves if that is love." The shame in the room was a living thing, crawling across the tables. I could feel it pressing in from every direction. For the first time in years, I didn't shrink beneath it. I let it stand. Dean shifted from foot to foot, his voice desperate. "Mom, please, can we just go somewhere private and talk?" But before I could answer, the wedding planner appeared at his elbow, clutching her clipboard like a shield. "Sir," she whispered urgently, "the guests are asking questions. Some are leaving. What should I tell them?" Dean's face crumpled further. Fallon hissed at her under her breath. "Just stall them." Kareem's eyes flicked to me. "You don't need to stay here." The thought terrified me. For 40 years, every choice I made had been about someone else. Harold, Dean, even Fallon now. The idea of walking away, of leaving the ballroom and its judgment behind, was like stepping off a cliff. But then I looked at my son, his lips pressed thin, his eyes darting nervously. I thought of the napkin shredded in my hand, the weight of every sacrifice I had made, the loneliness of every night since Harold's death. And I thought of the man beside me, steady and unflinching, offering me something I hadn't felt in decades. Dignity. I stood slowly, my chair scraping the marble. The room hushed further, if that was even possible. All eyes followed me. My knees trembled, but my voice was steady. "Tell them," I said to the wedding planner, "that the mother of the groom has left the building." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Fallon lurched forward, her face a mask of panic and rage. Dean's mouth opened in protest, but no sound came. Kareem stepped beside me, offering his arm, and together we walked through the parted crowd, their stares like heat on my skin. Each step was both agony and freedom. I could hear the murmurs behind me, the frantic voices trying to patch the spectacle, the fragments of whispers. 3 million. Abuse. Betrayal. We reached the doors, the cool night air spilling in. For the first time that evening, I breathed. But the silence that followed us wasn't empty. It was heavy with everything unresolved. My son, my daughter-in-law, my past, the man beside me. And as the doors closed behind us, cutting off the murmur of 300 stunned guests, I realized I had crossed a threshold I could never return from. The night air hit me like a splash of cold water. My chest rose and fell too fast, my pulse still hammering from what had just happened. For the first time in decades, I had walked away. And yet, as the ballroom doors closed behind us, the weight of what I had left pressed down. I had left my son on his wedding night. Kareem guided me down the steps, his hand warm at my elbow, steadying me against the trembling I couldn't hide. The murmurs from inside still leaked through the walls, fragments of laughter gone sour, hurried voices, a wedding unraveling in real time. "Breathe," Kareem said softly. "You did the right thing." I wanted to believe him, but guilt gnawed at me, sharp and insistent. Dean was still my child. No matter what he'd said, no matter how he'd humiliated me, some part of me ached with the instinct to protect him, to fix it, to stay. We slipped into a side corridor, then into a small room off the ballroom. Velvet chairs, heavy drapes, the faint hum of music trying to patch a broken celebration. My knees gave out, and I sank into one of the chairs, my hands trembling in my lap. "I can't believe this," I whispered. "Not tonight, not here." Kareem sat across from me, his eyes steady, his posture calm. "Mabel, you've been holding pain for years. Tonight it broke open. It had to." Before I could respond, the door burst open. Dean stumbled in, his tuxedo jacket wrinkled, his hair damp with sweat. Fallon followed close behind, her makeup retouched, her smile brittle but her eyes sharp as knives. "Mom," Dean said, shutting the door behind him. His voice cracked. "This is getting out of hand." "Out of hand?" My voice rose before I could stop it. "You auctioned me for $8, Dean, $8, in front of everyone." Fallon stepped forward quickly, her tone sickly sweet. "It was just a joke, Mabel. Harmless fun. Everyone was laughing." "Everyone was laughing at me," I snapped. "There's a difference." Dean ran both hands through his hair, making it stick up wildly. "Maybe it went too far, but you embarrassed us. You made a scene." I laughed then, a short, bitter sound. "I embarrassed you? Dean, you humiliated me." Fallon's eyes flicked to Kareem, her expression shifting, predatory. "Mr. Al-Rashid," she said smoothly. "Surely you understand. Families tease each other. It wasn't meant to be cruel." Kareem's gaze cut to her, cold and unflinching. "What I saw was cruelty, calculated, public, and unforgivable." Dean tried to take control, his voice rising. "You don't know what it's like living with her. You don't know how demanding she can be." "Demanding?" My voice cracked with disbelief. "When have I ever asked for anything except respect? I paid for your school. I covered your bills. I babysat so you could live your life. Demanding?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Dean's mouth opened, closed, but no words came. Fallon shifted, sensing his weakness, and slid behind him, her hands on his shoulders, possessive. "She's manipulating you," Fallon hissed. "She brought her rich boyfriend here to show us up." My jaw dropped. Rich boyfriend? I didn't even know Kareem was going to be here tonight. But Fallon wasn't listening. She leaned toward Kareem, her voice syrupy again. "Mr. Al-Rashid, perhaps we could talk privately. The four of us. Work something out." "No," Kareem said simply, his voice like steel. "I have no interest in negotiating with people who treat others as disposable." Fallon's smile faltered, her eyes narrowed, but Kareem wasn't done. He pulled something from his jacket, a card, and handed it to Dean. Dean looked down, read the embossed letters, and the blood drained from his face. "Kareem Al-Rashid," he stammered. "CEO, Al-Rashid Medical International?" Recognition dawned, horror chasing it. "You're that Al-Rashid?" "I am," Kareem said calmly. "And Al-Rashid Medical owns a controlling stake in Henderson Medical Supply." Dean's knees nearly buckled. "That's my company," he whispered. "Which makes me, technically, your employer," Kareem said. The silence was suffocating. Fallon's mouth hung open, then snapped shut. She smoothed her dress nervously, eyes darting between Dean and Kareem, calculating again. "You can't do this," Dean said hoarsely. "This is my wedding. You can't ruin everything." "I didn't ruin anything," Kareem said. "You and your wife did." Dean sank into a chair, his face crumpling. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "What have I done?" For a fleeting second, hope sparked in me. Maybe this was the moment he would see, would understand. But Fallon's grip on his shoulder tightened, her voice low and insistent. "Don't let her manipulate you. Don't let him. They're making you the fool." The fragile hope slipped away. My son's eyes darted, torn, but still tethered to her. I stood slowly, my legs shaking, my chest heavy with years of sacrifice and disappointment. Dean, I said softly, you forgot who I was. You forgot what I meant to you. He lifted his head, anguish written across his face. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean— Yes, you did, I cut in. My voice trembled, but I didn't waver. You did, and I can't unhear it. Fallon rolled her eyes, exasperated. This is ridiculous. She's acting like a child. Kareem stood, his presence towering, his voice low and dangerous. You will apologize to her. Now. Fallon's eyes flashed. I don't owe her anything. You do, Kareem said, pulling out his phone, scrolling with measured calm. Dean, do you know who signs the checks at Henderson? Dean's face went chalk white. Fallon's grip faltered, her nails digging into his jacket. You can't threaten us, she snapped. You wouldn't dare. Kareem's eyes hardened. I don't make idle threats. Dean's head dropped into his hands. God, he whispered. What have I done? The weight in my chest grew unbearable. My son, crumbling in front of me. My daughter-in-law, venom dripping from every word. The man I once loved, standing firm, defending me in a way Dean never had. Never. Tears burned my eyes again. For a moment, I felt nothing but despair. Maybe there was no saving this. Maybe the bond between mother and son was broken beyond repair. Fallon stepped closer to me, her voice sharp. You'll regret this, Mabel, all of it. Walk out now, and you'll lose your son forever. Her words sliced through me. The fear was real, deep, twisting. Could I bear that loss? Could I live with the silence of my only child? I swayed, my knees weak, my resolve trembling. Kareem reached for me, steadying me again. His voice was gentle, only for me. You don't have to stay in the fire to prove you can endure it. But Fallon's words clung like thorns. Lose your son forever. Dean lifted his head then, eyes red, voice raw. Mom, please. And in that moment, caught between the man who had once loved me, the woman who despised me, and the son who had betrayed me, I felt the ground tilt beneath my feet. Fallon's words still hung in the air like smoke. Walk out now, and you'll lose your son forever. My knees wavered. For a moment, I felt the old reflex claw at me, the urge to shrink, to appease, to bend myself into whatever shape might keep Dean close. But then Kareem's hand steadied my arm. His voice, low and steady, grounded me. You don't have to stay in the fire just to prove you can take the heat, he whispered. Dean's eyes lifted, red-rimmed, pleading. Mom, please. I looked at him, the boy I had raised alone, the man who had once called me his anchor. But all I saw was Fallon's hand gripping his shoulder, her nails pressing through the fabric, holding him in place. Something inside me broke free. No, Dean, I said, my voice sharp enough to slice the heavy air. Not this time. You don't get to plead with me after bidding $8 for me in front of the world. He flinched, his face crumpling. Fallon's lips curled into a sneer. You're being dramatic, she spat. It was a joke, and you're ruining our wedding. Kareem stepped forward, his presence filling the room. The only ones who ruin this wedding are the bride and groom. You chose humiliation over honor. You chose cruelty over respect, and now you're scrambling to clean up the mess. Fallon bristled, but I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. She was quick, though, always quick. She shifted her tone in an instant, smoothing her voice into something almost tender. Mr. Al-Rashid, she said sweetly, perhaps we got off on the wrong foot. We'd love to get to know you better. Maybe dinner sometime? Just the four of us? No, Kareem said flatly. I have no interest in dining with people who laugh at cruelty. Her cheeks flushed crimson. She turned to Dean, her mask cracking. Do something! Dean pushed to his feet, his voice rising, desperate. Look, Mom, you can't just walk away. You've embarrassed us enough. People are whispering. Phones are out. It's everywhere. Yes, I said, my voice steady now, almost calm. And they're whispering because of you, because you put a price on your mother, because you let your wife turn me into a spectacle. Fallon's smile snapped back, brittle and sharp. If we'd known who he was, she said, nodding toward Kareem, we would have treated you differently. The words stung, but not for the reason she thought. They revealed her truth. Kareem caught it instantly, his eyes narrowing. You only value her because of me? His voice was low, dangerous. That tells me everything about your character. Fallon faltered, but Dean rushed in, desperate. Mr. Al-Rashid, please, let's handle this quietly. This is family business. Kareem's laugh was short, humorless. Family? A family protects. A family doesn't auction its own for sport. The word hit like a blow. Abuse, exploitation, and now, not just whispered, it was declared, undeniable, unerasable. I straightened, my trembling gone. Years of silence, of excuses, of waiting for respect that never came. They all boiled up, sharp and unstoppable. Do you even hear yourselves? I said, my voice rising. Dean, I worked 2 jobs so you could go to private school. I sold my wedding ring so you could have that car. I mortgaged my house so you could go to college. And tonight you told me I was worth $8. Dean's face was wet with sweat. Fallon tugged at his arm, but he stood frozen, staring at me, shame beginning to flicker across his face. Kareem stepped closer to him, his voice calm but edged with steel. Dean, who do you work for? Henderson Medical, Dean muttered, confused. And who do you think Henderson Medical's biggest client is? Kareem asked. Dean's color drained. No, he whispered. That's not possible. Al-Rashid Medical holds a 60% stake, Kareem said firmly. Technically, I am your employer. Fallon gasped, her mask shattering. What? Dean swayed, his hands trembling. Oh my God. Kareem's tone stayed even, almost clinical. I don't involve myself in daily management, but I receive reports, performance, culture, reputation. His eyes cut like glass. Do you understand what tonight says about you? Dean's shoulders slumped, his voice cracked. It says I'm awful. It says God, Mom, I don't know what came over me. Fallon spun on him, panic flaring in her voice. Don't grovel! Don't you see what they're doing? They're trying to humiliate us! They? I snapped. Fallon, you did this. You humiliated me. Dean joined in, and you want me to believe you're the victim? She glared at me, her mask gone, her voice sharp with venom. You'll regret this. You think you've won because some billionaire swooped in? He won't stick around. He'll get bored. And then you'll have nothing. Not your son, not him, nothing. The words hit deep, but instead of weakening me, they sparked something fierce. I stepped closer, my voice steady, almost quiet. No, Fallon, the only regret I have is not seeing you clearly sooner. For a moment, silence filled the room again. Then Dean's voice broke it, thin and desperate. Mom, what do I do? How do I fix this? I looked at him, really looked, at the man who had traded my unconditional love for a woman's manipulations, at the son who had made me invisible until it was too late. You learn, I said softly. You learn to live without me fixing everything, because I won't anymore. Fallon gasped, furious. She's manipulating you, she hissed to Dean. Can't you see? She's turning him against us. She's tearing us apart. No, Kareem said firmly, his voice steady as stone. You tore yourselves apart the moment you turned cruelty into entertainment. Fallon's face twisted with rage. She lunged toward me, her voice a hiss. You'll regret walking out. If you leave now, don't ever expect to come back. I held her gaze, my voice clear and final. Good. The word hung like a verdict. Dean slumped into the chair, his head in his hands, silent. Fallon stood trembling, her chest rising and falling too fast, fury written across every line of her face. Kareem stood tall beside me, unshaken. And finally, I felt free. But freedom comes with consequences. I knew the whispers outside the door hadn't died. I knew the guests were already recording, already spreading what they'd seen. The story of a groom who bid $8 for his mother would not disappear. For the first time in my life, though, I didn't care. I turned to the door, ready to leave for good. But before I could step through, Fallon's voice followed me, shrill and desperate. "If you walk out, you'll ruin us. Dean will lose everything, his job, his future. You'll destroy your own son." My hand froze on the door handle. My heart slammed in my chest. Dean's voice, muffled, broken. "Mom, please!" And once again, I was torn between the son I had always sacrificed for and the life I might finally choose for myself. My hand rested on the door handle, Dean's voice still echoing behind me. "Mom, please!" Fallon's threat lingered too, her promise that if I walked out, I would ruin them. For so many years, that might have been enough to stop me. Guilt had always been the chain around my ankles. But not anymore. I turned, meeting my son's desperate eyes one last time. "Dean, you ruined yourself tonight. I didn't do this to you. Fallon didn't do it alone. You did it, with your own words." His mouth opened, but no sound came. Fallon's face twisted in fury. I let the silence stretch, let the truth sink in, and then I opened the door. The hallway outside buzzed with whispers, phones glowing like fireflies. Faces turned, some ashamed, some curious, some openly pitying. I didn't care. Kareem walked beside me, steady as a wall, his arm offered like a shield. Each step away from that room felt lighter, as if years were slipping from my shoulders. By the time we reached the exit, I knew there was no going back. We left the venue in Kareem's car, the headlights cutting through the night. Neither of us spoke for a while. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of everything unsaid, everything remembered. My hands trembled in my lap until Kareem reached over, covering them with his. "You don't have to explain yourself," he said quietly. "Not to me, not to anyone." Tears stung my eyes again, but this time they weren't bitter. They were cleansing. "I feel free," I whispered. Later, at the cafe downtown, the world slowed. The smell of coffee, the low hum of conversations, the glow of lamps over empty booths. It all felt unreal after the chaos. My phone buzzed nonstop, Dean's name lighting the screen, Fallon's number flashing after. Each message the same. "Come back. Fix this. You're embarrassing us." Not one word of apology. I blocked them both. The weight that lifted in that moment nearly knocked the breath out of me. Over steaming mugs, Kareem finally asked, "When is it going to be your turn to be happy?" His eyes were steady, gentle, waiting. I thought of the years after Harold's death, the nights alone in a house too quiet. The times Dean had taken and taken without once asking if I had anything left to give. I thought of Fallon's smirk, the laughter of strangers, the sting of being worth $8. And then I thought of Kareem, how he had waited 40 years, how he had stepped in when no one else did, how he had reminded me that dignity wasn't something to be begged for. When he asked me to come with him, to Dubai, to see the life we might have had, fear rose first. Fear of choosing wrong again. But beneath it was something else. Possibility. Weeks later, as I packed boxes in my kitchen, that fear was still there, but so was certainty. For the first time in decades, I wasn't living for someone else's approval. I was living for me. Dean showed up once more, hollow-eyed, Fallon fuming in the car. He asked me to stay, offered scraps of attention. Dinner once a month. Babysitting when they had kids. It was too little, too late. "You don't want me," I told him. You want what I can do for you, and I'm done earning love." His shoulders sagged, his eyes pleading, but when Fallon honked from the driveway, he chose her. Again. The next morning, I set down the last photo of him on the counter, whispered goodbye, and stepped into Kareem's car. Dubai was nothing like Denver. The villa overlooked the Persian Gulf, sunlight spilling into every room, gardens blooming even in winter. But the real beauty was this. No guilt, no begging, no pretending. Just peace, just love. 3 months later, I stood in Kareem's garden, wearing a dress the color of sunset. He smiled at me, as if I had been lost and finally found. When the imam pronounced us husband and wife, joy surged through me, pure and unburdened. Dean didn't call. He didn't send a card. Months later, I heard his marriage was cracking. Without me to hold their lives together, he and Fallon discovered they couldn't stand each other. For once, I didn't rush in to fix it. I let him face what he had created. Some people might say I was too old to start over, too late to choose myself. But standing on that terrace overlooking the sea, Kareem's hand warm in mine, I knew the truth. It is never too late. It's never too late to walk away from people who only take. Never too late to stop earning love that should be given freely. Never too late to choose dignity, to choose joy, to choose yourself. Dean learned too late what he had traded, his mother's unconditional love for a wife who only loved what he could provide. But by the time he realized it, I was already gone. And I was finally free. Now, I want to ask you, because I've told you everything exactly as it happened. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever felt invisible, discarded by the very people you gave everything to? Leave your story in the comments below. Let me know the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this truth can reach. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's getting happy. And happiness, I've learned, is always worth more than $8.